Hello everybody, it's Larry and welcome to today's video, and this is going to be the most important video I've given you to date. And that's pretty tall words because I believe our clustering video and the series that goes along with that is the most powerful group of videos for somebody looking for their biological family that there is. But now what we're going to do, DNA changed the world of genealogy. It did. And we have people who are looking for their parents. And I've mentioned it before. They don't just want to find their parents. They need to find their parents. It's a craving like oxygen. They have to find it. And that's why I've said, hey, get that information, get those trees public. But what we need to do is do that responsibly. I've made many a genealogist's head explode by saying that we need to make these trees public. But now I'm going to put the bow around everything because I've been so busy, focusing on how to do this and help people to do that. We need to learn how to do this responsibly. And that's why this video, you're going to want to pass it around to everybody you know, that's whether they're looking for their biological family or there's somebody that's been doing genealogy like I have for 30 years. It's something we all need to do. So I'd like for everybody watching this video to make a pre-New Year's resolution. And by that, I mean make the resolution today that by the end of this year, by New Year's, you'll have it done. Create the floating trees necessary within your tree. So let's talk about what a floating tree is, the effects of a floating tree, how to do it, how to work with it, how to add it back so that you understand that. And then we'll finish with how important it is for all of us to do this. All right, so the concept of a floating tree is, obviously pedigree-wise, it goes from the child through each of the parents. So every person on the planet has a mother and a father, okay? They have a male father, they have a female mother. Now, there could be family units that are different, but as far as biology, there is a mother and a father, and that's true for everybody. So, the connections, when you're making a floating tree, you need to think of it in that concept of creating the floating trees for that line. All right? So, what I mean is, Dolly McFarland, and we'll use her as our example. She has a father of James Larkin and a mother of Sarah Taylor. And that's in her profile page. It shows both of them, father and mother. If I was to work up here with Sarah and say that Sarah, was not married to James Larkin ever, it doesn't change the fact that we've said that Sarah's the mother and James is the father of Dolly. That's true in my case. Linda and Larkin were never married. Larkin never knew about me. Mom remarried family number one, Basie. Then she divorced Basie, married Jones, who adopted me to Jones. Turns out that I'm biologically Brown. Okay? My connection is Brown. My connection is Perryman. These two don't have a connection except for one brief moment. Okay? So when you change the relationship here between Sarah and James, it's not going to change the reality of the parentage. So we have to work with the child to say James is not the father. So we're going to go to Dolly McFarland's profile page. All right, up at the top right where it says edit. See my cursor up here? It says edit. You notice the QR code went down to the bottom. Check out the QR code at the end of this video. If you like this video, if you want to see more videos like this, check out the QR code. Your support, it keeps us on going. We click edit, and we're going to do edit relationships. Now, it says James Larkin's the father, Sarah's the mother, which is what we just said. Now, we're going to remove James Larkin as the father. Now, this is going to immediately reflect back in our tree. James Larkin McFarland is not there. He is now a floating tree. Now, if we go back to Dolly's profile page, one thing when you're making a floating tree, you need to also add the notes. So view notes, you can see here, believed to be the daughter of floating tree James Larkin McFarland, 1836-1934. I created myself a note so that I would know later if I wanted to reattach it, who I should be attaching to. Now, James Larkin is still here. His entire tree is still here. His pictures and everything are still in my tree. Just not in the tree that I'm linked to, which I'm saying the tree that I'm linked to is the accurate tree for me. All right? So, from a pure genealogical standpoint, this is what we need to be doing, is creating and fixing our trees so we say, okay, we know this relationship to be me. The working trees or the micro trees or the floating trees, they're still there, and we work on them completely separate until such time as we can attach it. So let's look up James Larkin McFarland. We're going to go tree search because he's still in our tree. James Larkin, there he is, James Larkin McFarland. He is still in our tree. All right? He was still married to Sarah. It's just that that's not Dolly's father. Maybe Sarah remarried. Maybe there was a one-night stand or an affair situation. Whatever the situation was, we now have him as a floating tree. So to give you an example of what, say, if you do work on this tree, he's not connected, okay? He's not connected to the main tree. I am going to review, and I'm going to add this. We're going to take it off in a minute. But I just want you to see what happens if I was to research and add somebody to the tree here, okay? That wasn't research, but if you had done research and added this Larkin McFarland, okay? Larkin McFarland, 1790. All right, we added him to the tree. So let's go back to our main tree. We have to go to the home page because this is the main tree. Now we're going to add James Larkin back. So we're going to add father. We're going to say select someone in your tree. We're going to do James Larkin. There he is, James Larkin McFarland, 1860, 1934. And boom, there is all of his tree. The floating tree has now been grafted back onto the tree. So let's go to the work that we added. Remember, we added this Larkin McFarland 1790? So that work came with it. So you can go out and work on these floating trees and then graft them back on as you prove them. So you can work, and these floating trees can be your dirty trees that are separate than your main tree. The main tree being the one that you verified. Now, I don't want to keep him, obviously, because I added him simply for the purpose of the video to show you that if you had gone out and done some work, that you could bring it in. Any of the work that you've done will come back into the tree. What should be in this tree? Well, if you were to say, here is the documents that you found, and you presented it to, say, 5 friends, if 3 or 4 of your friends would agree and say, yeah, I believe you're right, I believe that is that right person, then I believe you can attach it. But you have to have some kind of evidence. You can't just say, well, they got the last name of Taylor, so I'm related to Zachary Taylor, the president. Woohoo! A lot of people do that. Yeah, just because you have the same last name doesn't mean that you're related to them necessarily. So even if they're from Scotland or something, you say, oh yeah, I have Cowans right here. Sarah Jane Cowan from Scotland or Ireland or whatever. I'm related to Krista Cowan's husband or whatever. I can't say that. What I can say is, or Krista, because last name Cowan, I can't say that. Now, it is, we both do have the Cowans that go to the same area of North Ireland. And because the populations were small, there's a chance it could go either way. But just saying that you can't just say, here's the name, here's the location, you're related. A lot of people make that jump. In fact, I have one in my tree, drives the entire family nuts. People keep adding, it'll come up every once in a while here, potential mother, say Peggy Smith, born in 1751. John's in 1782, Wilson 1808. He's the second oldest of 16 kids. The last kid would have been born with Peggy was 84. It didn't happen like that. So, but people add it because they wanted to track that line through Peggy Smith, to John Smith, and some famous people in England, to the royal line, etc. So they made that leap. And it comes up here and gets suggested. So what I've done is I'm working on who this is, trying to figure out who it is. I've got a floating branch for it. So I want to create a floating branch for everybody. So let's say that I haven't conclusively proven that John Taylor is the father here. All right, so I would go to Profile, and there's my notes there. I want to create a floating tree, so I'm going to do edit relationships, John Taylor, 1782, and I remove that. So now John Taylor and all of his tree is still there, but I've now created a floating tree at this point. So what we need to do is go through our trees at every point, like right here, Nancy Adeline Gahan. I believe it to be, with the documents that I found, to be Joshua Gann. But again, I don't know that to be 100% sure. So I need to go out, and the mother was Peggy C, which obviously, some say Cagle, some say Crittenden. I'm beginning to think Crittenden. So now I've created that as a floating tree. And so if we do this with our trees, okay, so now I create that hole there. So if I look at my father's side now, let's get a view from his family tree. I'm creating these holes in my tree. And a lot of people don't want to do that because, well, I've got these holes in my tree. The tree information and the parents are still there. That entire branch is still there. But now when people come to look at my tree, they're going to be able, if I finish pruning this thing into the micro trees, or pruning the branches off and making their own micro trees, floating trees, they're going to be able to look at my tree and go, this is good. This is documented. It's got the dates, the pictures, the documentation, even DNA backup for these people. So that any of my descendants or relatives are going to be able to, if they tie into one of these people, know that how they connect to me. There won't be a doubt. Then they can look at the floating trees, and because I'm going to put in the names here in their profiles, I'm going to create their notes. Right here it says view notes, and I'm going to say, hey, they're connected to this floating tree, and you want to add the person that you suspect. And then maybe you suspect later that it's a different person, and then you add that into your note, and then add why, and don't delete the old one. I used to do that, but I now have like a running notepad for a person until I prove them. Because I believe this for one reason, I believe that for one reason. And then realizing that sometimes they're like, oh, I forget that I've already marked that one off, and I chase that same rabbit hole again. So I don't want to do that. You want to keep the notes, keep them over there in that notes section, and that way you don't have to redo your work. So create the floating trees. Make your pre-New Year's resolution to make the floating trees. Prune the trees. This way, we get the best of both worlds. We satisfy good genealogical practices by having good, solid trees out there on Ancestry. At the same time, we are also allowing our trees, with the floating trees, to be shared with those people who are desperately searching for their family. Your micro tree, let's pull up James Larkin McFarland. And I'm going to give you, kind of a real world example. All right, so let's look at his micro tree. All right, so I don't know for a fact he's connected with Sarah, but I know this James and this Mary Elizabeth, and maybe I'm researching for a biological family, and one person's tree comes up through Jones and Samuel and Mary, and another person's tree that I'm working with comes up to this James, 1832, and I have the Mary certificate between these two. They are going to be able to connect their micro tree here, their micro tree here, realize it's James McFarland. Now, because they are a DNA match to me, they're going to be able to connect their trees together, find their biological family, and if they contact me and say, hey, I was able to verify that James was indeed married to Sarah with the child of Dolly, then you'll be able to make that connection. And so they can help you. So we clean up our trees. We clean it up for everybody. We create the floating trees. That helps everybody. And we get to help each other, which is kind of what the whole genealogical community is supposed to be about. So let's make a pre-New Year's resolution. If you're with me on that, to that QR code, throw a 1 or a 5 over here. Buy me a cup of coffee and say, I'm going to do it. Let me know that you're going to take part in cleaning up your tree. And it's really easy to do, folks. Really easy to do. You go to the profile page for the person that you're not sure about their relationship. Click on Edit and simply remove the person that you're not sure of. And by doing that, you still have that information. It's still in your tree. Make sure to make a good note about it. Sometimes Ancestry, it's faster to request it again than to wait on it. So see how fast that was? So if you do it a while, you learn some little tricks like that. So if I'm not sure about James Larkin, I can create him into a floating tree, and we can clean up our trees where people can look at our trees and see what is accurate. We can continue to work on it, and we can always graft it back. But don't forget, when you do that, make the note on who you've connected it to. So when we view notes, we want to say, believed to be the daughter of floating tree, James Larkin McFarland. You want to make sure it's there, because a month from now, a year from now, you're going to be like, who was it I thought that was the father there? Throw on a My Tree tag, say, hey, this is where my brick wall is, so that you can come back and see that. So if we all were to do this, and we were to pass this around, and a lot of people, everybody did this, we would clean up the trees on Ancestry near immediate. If everybody did it, by the end of the year, we'd have all these clean trees, but at the same time, all of the information necessary to help people with DNA surprises would also be out there. For those of you who are worried about putting your tree from private to public, because maybe you've heard some of my videos encouraging you to make them public, by the same token, you hear people at your genealogical meetings saying keep them private until you can prove it. This is a way you can do both. You can help your fellow human find their biological families. And yes, believe it or not, your tree, your information, your hard work does help people find their families. Because your tree is one of numerous trees. Anybody on that DNA match, a lot of people who are taking their DNA test, they take it to find out their ethnicity for the water cooler talk, or because they want to find out about themselves. So help these people out. Make your trees public, but let's be responsible with the floating trees. That's it. Hope you enjoyed the video. If you did, give it a thumbs up, like, and subscribe. If you haven't subscribed, why not? Make you a pre-New Year's resolution. Let's clean up our trees. Make the floating trees out there so that we can work on it, as well as have the other. Now, you can make you a master tree if you want to, do that and keep it private, but let's do the working one, the floating one out there. That way we get all of our information out there publicly for people, help them find their families, but at the same time, let's be responsible to the history of genealogy and to family history by making good trees. All right? Don't forget to check out that QR code, and we'll talk to you again soon.